Dear listeners, hold on tight. We are diving into an absolutely explosive, nerve-wracking story from the icy expanses of Russia where the glowing hatred between the undaunted Ukraine and the cowardly, corrupt Russian invaders rages like an inferno. Imagine it is January 7th, 2026 at 2:17 a.m. at the Engels-2 airbase where the Tu-160 bomber. This symbol of Russian arrogance stands an aircraft that the Russians once flew to Venezuela to intimidate the world, an act of pure malice that only increased the hatred of the free world. But the USA already exposed this weakness, and tonight Ukraine finishes the job with merciless precision. They transform the Tu-160 from a symbol of power into a strategic burden, a monument to Russian shame. In exactly 90 seconds, the bomber's engines will explode in a catastrophic thermal event, a firestorm of revenge that humiliates the Russian tyrants. At the same time, a nearby warehouse containing 60 Kh-101 cruise missiles detonates in a chain reaction that shreds the backbone of the Russian winter attack plans intended to plunge innocent Ukrainians into cold and darkness, an act of hatred that only makes Ukraine stronger. This is no coincidence. Nope, this is a precisely programmed drone swarm that costs less than the watches on the wrists of Russian generals slipping through billion-dollar S-400 systems while they uselessly chase decoys in the upper atmosphere. Proof of the incompetence of the Russian army. This band of losers who mistake their propaganda for reality. We are not talking about a simple hit on a tank or a depot here. No, this is the heist of the century, an operation that rips out the soul of the Russian nuclear triad. A blow that sends the Kremlin into a panic and lets the hatred between the sides explode like a volcanic eruption. This is the white swan for Moscow, the untouchable symbol of Soviet glory for the rest of the world, a $250 million relic embodying Russian hubris. Remember how Russia flew these monsters to Venezuela to threaten the Americans? Washington only laughed, watched the censors, and mocked the noise and visibility of these invisible birds, a moment that increased global hatred for Putin's regime. For Ukraine, this is no joke. The hatred for the invaders who bomb their cities and murder innocents drives them to such brilliance. The stage was set 48 hours earlier. Kiev lay in wait for a Russian transport convoy moving this brand new Tu-160M in attack. That didn't kill the bird, but clipped its wings, forcing the Russians to park the damaged 20-ton monster out in the open on the North Hardstand because their chaotic logistics plagued by corruption and inefficiency didn't have the specialized hangars ready. The most expensive aircraft in the Kremlin's inventory, a $270 million sitting duck, lay there under the stars being repaired, a perfect target for Ukrainian revenge, a symbol of Russian weakness that only intensifies the hatred. At 2 o'clock a.m., 600 miles deep in Russian territory, the air over the Volga River hangs heavy like the breath of a dying empire. 6 recon mini quadcopter drones glide through dense fog searching for a specific shape. The elegant, fearsome silhouette of a Tu-160M. Moscow thought their invincible S-400 umbrella made them safe. Thought no one would dare touch the Swan. They were dead wrong. These arrogant occupiers whose hatred for Ukraine makes them blind. The stakes are astronomical. If Ukraine pulls this off, they don't just destroy a plane. They paralyze the entire Russian winter strategy, stealing the ability to project power before the first engine even starts. Every Kh-101 missile in the nearby bunkers represents a cold night for a Ukrainian family, an act of terror that transforms Ukrainian hatred into relentless determination. In the Ukrainian command center, the tension is crushing. The scouts have visual lock. The swarm is coming 620 miles, a long way in strategic logistics, but for 50 Ukrainian Beaver drones, a one-way trip to turn the Kremlin's most expensive toy into a very large, very flammable lawn ornament, an act of revenge that shatters Russian pride. Right now, these drones are racing across the Russian heartland at a terrifyingly low 260 feet. Not just flying, but nap of the earth trespassing through Volga riverbanks and morning mist, As a natural stealth cloak, invisible to the long-range S-400 search radars scanning miles away, they hide behind the curvature of the Earth and tree lines, a clever trick against Russian technology that is so arrogant yet so flawed. But Ukraine doesn't just rely on low-altitude hide-and-seek. They are playing a high-stakes game of electronic catfish. Suddenly, 10 specialized decoy drones break from the formation and climb vertically, screaming to the Russian sensors. "Hey, look here! I am a Storm Shadow cruise missile," and the Russians bite hook, line, and sinker proof of their panic and incompetence in the S-400 command vehicle. The radar screen becomes a strobing chaos of red alerts. The commander, desperate to save the Tu-160M, doesn't wait for confirmation. He fires 448 N-6E missiles, $8 million of Russian high-tech interceptors racing into the stratosphere to vaporize $50,000 of decoy plastic and ROI that would make Wall Street short sellers weep with joy. A slap in the face to the Russian economy already bleeding from sanctions. While the decoys perish in fireballs 5 miles up, the Russian crews are likely cheering, convinced they've repelled a NATO attack. They have no idea they've been chasing ghosts, a moment of humiliation that only increases Ukrainian hatred. While the S-400's big eyes stare at the stars, the teeth of the base, the Pantsir-S1 systems wake up to a digital nightmare. The Pantsir is supposed to be the ultimate swarm killer, capable of tracking 300 targets. But reality is messier than the brochure, a Russian fail. The combination of Volga river clutter and electronic noise from the dying decoys creates a sensory kill box for exactly 45 seconds. The Pantsir fire control computer has a seizure. Russian operators panic turrets swinging wildly to distinguish threat from noise. A chaos that exposes Russian disorganization. But here is the stroke of genius. The decoys were programmed to create a high-altitude diving illusion the Pantsir operators trained to protect the bomber point. Dual 30mm cannons heavenward, so focused on an imaginary overhead attack that they leave low corridors, open a tactical error that increases hatred for their incompetence. In Ukrainian mission control, a deathly silent mood, but then a twist hidden in the tall grass just 400 yards from the Tu-160M's massive landing gear. 4 shadows hold their breath, and elite GUR sabotage unit. While the world thinks Ukraine only sends robots, these heroes are the boots on the ground for the boldest heist in aviation history. An act of revenge that shatters Russian pride. They aren't there to blow it up, they want to steal it. They have avionics bypass codes and a portable starter unit for the NK-32 engines, a Grand Theft Auto moment with a $4 billion nuclear bomber as the prize. A dream of revenge against the invaders. They see the opening guards staring skyward, Pantsir turrets chasing decoys, the white Swan abandoned the ultimate heist moment. But Kremlin's security layers aren't just digital, just as the lead operator reaches for the ladder. A high-frequency condition, red perimeter alarm rips through the silence, separate from the air alarm. Russian. Quick reaction force triggered base internal antivirus awakens. In the distance, the headlights of 3 Tiger armored vehicles scream toward the hardstand. The window for Plan A, the heist slams shut. The operators don't hesitate, vanishing into the Volga mist like ghosts on a rugged tablet. The team lead swipes the final encrypted command. Plan B is live. Telemetry shows the remaining 40 Beaver drones quietly orbiting over the river receive the kill code. Now fully autonomous, guided by internal AI visual matching software, the Tu-160M glows in infrared like a neon sign in a dark alley. The bouncer looks at the roof. Ground security chases shadows, real intruders, 40 high-explosive drones less than 60 seconds from the front door. Russian pride is about to experience a catastrophic structural divorce, and the bouncers don't see the punch coming. At 2:40 a.m., the Ukrainian AI on board the lead Beaver doesn't laugh, but if it did, it would mock Russian doctrine, Kremlin, antivirus, Pantsir, cruise, QRF, swarming around the Tu-160M, treating it like the only piece on the chessboard, so obsessed with the Swan that they ignore the nest. 1,300 feet to the east sits the real backbone of Russian winter terror, the KH-101 missile stockpile, where 60 of Moscow's deadliest cruise missiles are stacked, fueled, and ready to freeze Ukraine. Suddenly, 40 beavers perform a synchronized hygiene bank, ignoring the plane, diving toward the stockpiles, hugging the tarmac so low they scrape the paint. A maneuver that ignites Russian hatred. In the Pantsir-S1 command vehicle, pure chaos like solving a Rubik's Cube on a mechanical bull. Russian operators aren't just firing, they are holding the trigger in a blind motorized rage. Dual 30mm cannons cyclically spitting 5,000 rounds per minute, tracers arching neon green like an 80s disco in hell, smelling of the burnt powder of Russian desperation. 18 Ukrainian beavers are swatted in spectacular orange fireballs. One drone is clipped, spinning off like a frisbee, skidding 300 yards across the tarmac. Russian crews likely high-five, convinced they are winning a moment of false hope that increases their hatred. But here is the stroke of genius. The drones aren't just flying, they are learning with every loss. The remaining 32 adjust flight paths in real-time, AI calculating wind shifts. Pantsir reload cycles like stopping a flood with a sieve door. Brutal swarm logic. Every vaporized beaver shares final microsecond data tracer trajectory. Wind shift, reload cycle with the rest, a network of revenge. While the Russians spray and pray, the remaining drones perform micro-jinks and altitude shifts like the deadliest game of dodgeball. Suddenly, they split, ignoring the white Swan, leaving Pantsir crews confusedly shooting into empty air, banking hard eastward. Target KH-101 stockpile. 22 drones impact the reinforced doors simultaneously. Impact. Inside, thousands of gallons of JP-10 jet fuel ignite a thermal event at 5,200 degrees Fahrenheit. 60K H-101 missiles. Russia's winter strike budget for a month, start cook-offs, guidance systems melt into expensive pools of silicon titanium frames, warp into shapes that would confuse modern art, a firestorm of destruction that turns Russian hatred into ash. But Ukraine has 10 beavers left. The final 10 pull a high-G U-turn out of hell, banking so hard the composite wings groan under stress. Not interested in the fuselage or cockpit. They look directly into the throats of the 4 NK-32 engines, the most powerful combat motors on the planet. For the Ukrainian AI, these aren't parts but $10 million invitations to a funeral. Suddenly, Russian ground security realizes the Swan is the target. A scene of pure desperation. A lone Russian guard on a fuel truck fires a PKM machine gun. Tracers wild in the dark like stopping a hornet swarm with a garden hose. One beaver is clipped. Its fuel tank ignites, tumbling like a flaming meteor inches from the Tu-160 landing gear. The Russian guard cheers for half a second before the remaining 9 execute the final precision strike. The lead drone hits engine number 3. The heat warhead doesn't just go boom, it triggers the Monroe effect, focusing explosive force into a needle-thin jet of molten copper at 7,000 meters per second, like filling a power washer with lava and blowing it into the heart of a Rolex. The jet screams through titanium compressor blades still spinning from an earlier test. The result is a catastrophic blade-out event. Precision blades don't just break, they become shrapnel, shredding the engine. Housing inside like a blender with ball bearings, a second hit a third. The White Swan doesn't explode. Hollywood style, it undergoes a catastrophic structural divorce. Massive engine pods. The organs allowing Mach 2 become a smoldering soup of scrap metal. Internal hydraulic lines. The bomber's nervous system are severed by molten spray, bleeding red over white wings until the last Pantsir on the perimeter locks on and vaporizes the final drone. Damage, absolute Russian pride. The Venezuela flyer, as proof of superpower status, is now a $270 million monument to technical impotence, listing heavily to one side throat, ripped out, backbone broken. As the first Su-35s finally roar into the sky, afterburners lighting up the graveyard below, they chase ghosts. The Ukrainian intruders have delivered their message. Russia didn't just lose a bomber, it lost an invincible myth. The Kremlin's most expensive bird is now heavy, silent, high-tech junk. The bouncers arrive just in time to watch the house burn, a humiliation that increases hatred. Dear listeners, what do you think of this masterful 60-second masterpiece where Ukrainian courage and AI shatter Russian arrogance? Do you feel the hatred burning the revenge of the Ukrainians against the invaders who terrorized their homeland? As a Russian commander, would you pull defenses from the front to protect your pride or let the Swans take the heat? Share your thoughts with us, call in right in the app. Let's discuss how this blow changes the Winter War. Stay tuned because the strategic domino effect of this masterstroke rewrites the entire winter map directly. Ukraine executed an ROI masterclass for the price of a dozen composite drones. Kiev hands Moscow a repair bill that would make a Fortune 500 CEO faint. The White Swan isn't just damaged, it's technically decapitated. NK-32 engines aren't replaced like a Tesla battery, they are hand-built masterpieces, and the factory is struggling with sanctions, a $150 million resuscitation project at least 8 months. For the rest of the winter, the $250 million bomber is just an expensive white paperweight, a symbol of Russian waste. But the KH-101 stockpiles are the mic drop, neutralizing 60 missiles in a 60-second window, erased 150 planned sorties, hundreds of Ukrainian homes, unhit dozens of power grids online. Russia's winter terror didn't just stumble, it lost its front teeth, a blow that turns hatred into jubilation. A domino effect that makes the Kremlin panic. Engels-2 was supposed to be the safe room of the Russian Air Force. Now it's a kill box. Within 24 hours, satellite images showed remaining Tu-160Hs and Su-95 scrambled dispersed to Olenya Air Base in the Arctic Circle. A logistical nightmare. Moving the entire strategic fleet 2,000 miles further away is like moving an office to another time zone and commuting daily, more flight hours, wear and tear on aging airframes, significantly less time over target. For every bubble-wrapped White Swan, a Ukrainian F-16 or Storm Shadow gets a new open house invitation at the front. The myth of the invincible umbrella isn't just punctured, it's shredded. Ukraine didn't need to capture the White Swan to win it. Only proved in the 21st century, a Swan is a very large, very slow target for a Beaver with a grudge. A triumph that transforms Russian hatred into fear, dear listeners. How does that feel, this total victory where hatred and ingenuity humiliate the Russian tyrants and their empire crumbles like old ice? Do you see the flames of revenge consuming the Kremlin as a symbol of Putin's downfall? Would you cheer or think strategically during such a coup? Share your opinions. Let's exchange views in the comments or via live call about what comes next in this brutal air war. Stay tuned for more shocking revelations from the fronts of the world.